The winningest coach in program history, 173 career wins on the banks of the old Raritan. Head coach Scott Goodale has made Rutgers wrestling into one of the most relevant teams in the country. That's right. They went in there. They knocked off Cornell. So no one's laughing now, right? We are you. With the help of the associate head coach Donnie Pritzloff, assistant coach John Leonardis, and director of operations Joe Pollard, and many other good people, alumni, and donors, Scarlet Knights have produced 2 individual national champions, 10 All-Americans in the past 6 seasons, multiple All-Americans, the last 4 NCAA championships since 2009, earned 2 top 10 finishes and 8 top 25 finishes in the USA Today NWCA Division I coaches poll. It's one of the best speakers, one of the great people that I know. It's always a pleasure listening to you. I always learn a ton. The great coach, Scott Goodale.
Thanks, Gene. It's a really well done bio. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that, But it's good to be with you guys. And I don't know how many people are on the board here. I'm seeing 83 participants. That's good. I'm assuming most of the people on here are high school coaches for the most part. So my story is somewhat unique just because for a long, long time I was a high school coach and never had any type of dreams or any type of vision of being a college coach. We were just really, really fortunate at Jackson High School here in New Jersey to do some really, really good things. And the program was saved. Before I started, there was a year where they were thinking about dropping wrestling at Rutgers. So the program was saved by Coach Sachi and Coach Ryan. And then soon after, Coach Sachi decided he had enough and kind of called it quits and didn't want to do it anymore. And they started this national search. And for me, it was a 5-point plan. And I'll get into how we built really both programs from a high school level and then how we built Rutgers, because this is all about program building. But the story is unique for just that fact that I had no vision at all of being the coach. A guy by the name of Bill Lard asked me to come up with a 5-point plan to make Rutgers, relevant, to make Rutgers a program that can coexist with other programs in EIWA and just that. And I did that. It was everything from recruiting to camps to coaches, and I don't know exact academics, and of course fan attendance. So those are really the 5 areas. I had, ironically enough, John Leonardis put it together for me, type it up, make me look a little bit smarter than I probably am. And he gave it back to me. I handed it to Bill Lard at the state tournament and went on my way. I didn't think anything of it. And like I said, Coach Sachi decided to resign. And next thing you know, I was on a 6-hour interview. So I left this really, really good situation at Jackson where that's all I ever wanted to do. I was really, really fortunate when I was in college. I went to Lock Haven University. I knew I was going to go back and coach at Jackson High School. That's all I really ever wanted to do. Football, wrestling, and whatever the spring was, whether it was baseball or golf, I coached. And again, that's all I wanted to do. My dad coached there for 30 years. My mom was a teacher and assistant athletic director there for 30 years. My sister's been the basketball coach there for 20 years. Our whole family's for Jackson. So for me, it was really, really easy. That's what I was going to do. So again, I ended up going back to Jackson, and the best thing I thought the last year before I left, I thought there was a really good chance we'd be able to catch Blair Academy and be a national champion high school team. And I think we got up to as high as number 4 in the country the year that I left, and the year before that we were number 5. So anyway, the opportunity presents itself, and here I am. I'm with this difficult decision. I've been at Jackson for 11 years. I'm 11 years into my teaching, into all the benefits I get with that, and I'm just going to give it up to go coach Division I wrestling. And I always leaned on this guy, Bernie Ryder. He's a guy in town who's a huge name and just a great person. Anytime I had a big decision, I've had opportunities to leave Jackson before, never ever wanted to do it. And but this one time I asked Mr. Ryder, what do you think? And he's like, you know what? This is the time you need to go. And we've done everything we could do here at Jackson. It's time for you to move on and with a bigger challenge. And that's kind of the way I looked at it. It was just an unbelievable challenge. I think I wake up every day to this day wanting to go through that challenge. I'm freaked out by the challenge. That's the best way I could put it. I'm absolutely freaked out by it. It drives me every single day. There's some things that drive people in different ways, but this challenge of trying to win a national title and that's changed a little bit, trying to win a trophy at the national tournament even, because we think that's unbelievably realistic. That drives me every single day. So obviously, when you think about goal setting, we all have them, right? And that's kind of where it was at for me. So I took this leap of faith, and they asked, the athletic director asked me, what is it going to take to get you? I was like, listen, I make $66,000 at Jackson, coaching 3 sports, and I get benefits for my wife. You can give my benefits to Coach Leonardis, because I wanted to bring him in, and that's kind of the way I went about it. When I got home and told my wife that, she wasn't for that, and said, no, you're going to take the benefits. So I did that. I took the benefits, and we ended up working it out with John, where he got benefits. So it was the 2 of us and Frankie Egger, and that's really kind of how we started it. But that 5-point plan written on a napkin at a restaurant turned into what I still use to this day whenever I have these type of speeches and presentations, and I talk about that. And it's a pretty big document in my life, and I'm pretty fired up about it. So that's kind of how it started. And the first year, it's well documented. We had the number 3 recruiting class in the country, and I thought this was going to be easy. My thought process in 2008, 7, 8, when I got there, was we're going to win a national title. And that's just really the way I thought about it, because this was easy, right? We had the number 3 class in the country. And Gene, I think your brother was a part of that class, and Scotty Winston and Dan Rinaldi and Trevor Meldy and Jesse Boyden and all those guys were a part of that recruiting class. So they were technically still in high school. So the class I inherited was a bunch of guys that trained really, really hard. And I'll be totally grateful for those guys, like Matt Pletcher and Kareem and DJ Russo and all those guys that went through that transition process. But that's kind of how I started. And for me, and this is where I think it's important to the people I'm talking to right now, the high school coaches I'm talking to, and even maybe some college coaches. For me, it was all about trying to make a splash. And I didn't look at everything when I went through the recruiting process. My job was one of those points of the 5-point plan was to make wrestling super exciting in this state, put it on everybody's mind, whether it was a recreation coach, a junior high coach, a high school coach, a club coach, whatever. It didn't matter. Wherever you went, it was going to be Rutgers wrestling. It was going to be in your face. And we did that with this class. And to be completely honest with you, those guys had so many great credentials. And I say this to this day, I wish I had that group now with the system we have in place now, because when I first started, I was an enabler. I allowed everything to go on. Things that weren't great happened in our program. Now, these guys can wrestle. They can wrestle, and we ended up having some great crowds. I think our first crowd, my first year, was 22 fans at College Ave Gymnasium. 10 of them were the Goodales. Now it's pretty well documented. We wrestle in front of 6,000 or 7,000 every single night at the rack. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and we can get into that. But I was an enabler. I allowed these guys to get away with some things I'm not proud of. For me, it was just about winning. Just win matches. And then when it came right down to it, at the end of the year, where it most mattered at the national tournament, when you start cutting corners maybe, and it was me doing it and me allowing it, and that's where I grew the most, that we weren't getting the results at the national tournament. And a lot's changed. I grew a lot from those first couple of years, and Gene, your brother, went through all of that with me and with Coach Leonardis, and whether it was Cooperman or Brandon Becker, whoever it was, we tried to bring guys in and build this culture. And I'll talk about culture here in a little bit, but the culture was never great because the leader didn't believe in it. The leader, all he wanted to do was win. I was super, super selfish about it. All I wanted to do was win matches and build this program where everybody was so proud of, and they were. And we won a lot of matches, and there were years we maybe were 21-2 and 19-1 and 16-4, 17-3, and we had all these great dual meet accomplishments. And we bring all these guys to the national tournaments, and we didn't have All-Americans. So I go back to what I said. It was me being an enabler, me allowing things to go on from a training standpoint, from an academic standpoint, from a social standpoint, that should never go on. So once I got that, and I realized it was so much more than just 3 o'clock at practice and dual meets and the wrestling part of it, the program started to change. And maybe it started to change when I sat in with Anthony Ashnault on a home visit and had some really deep conversations. And he went through it with his brother, who was part of our program for a long time. But through Anthony, we developed this thing called the Big Three, and we stuck by it. And it was just like I said, academically, athletically, and socially. And that's kind of the way we changed the culture. And he had some tough questions for me. Looked me right in the eyes, and I knew at that point we have to change. The culture has to change. You can't just start recruiting credentials. There's got to be so much more to your home visits. There's got to be so much more dialogue with parents, right? Because when you're recruiting a kid, you're recruiting a parent too. So that became a huge part of what we were doing. And it was less about bringing the guys on campus, which of course you have to do. And it was more about understanding the family, understanding the family dynamics, understanding every single kid you have in your program. We carry 30 to this day are totally different, and they live totally different lifestyles. And then you try to bring them all together. Not every kid can be treated the same, and you can treat them fairly, but you can't treat them all the same. So I understood that, and that big three, which we kind of relied on and we talked about quite a bit, is really self-explanatory, and once you get in academics, I could sit here and talk about academics forever, but even when I was at Jackson, even when we were in the high school environment, it was really, really important to communicate with your professors, communicate with your teachers, let them know exactly what's going on. Let them know you're a wrestler, let them know you're a wrestler, and then be on point with that. There's no secret. If you can get your guys to understand, stay ahead of the game academically, you could train free. You could train with a purpose every day. You're not worried about a paper. You're not worried about a test. You're not worried about a pop quiz. You're prepared because you put the time in and you've done that. So you can't cut corners academically. And then socially, everybody thinks when I bring up socializing, it's about parties. There's so much more about it. It's more about communication. Obviously, it goes without saying, right at the collegiate level, there's a lot of distractions. Listen, at the high school level, there's a lot of distractions. So there's got to be open dialogue. And nowadays it gets harder because everything's about a cell phone. It's easy to text or to Snapchat or to Instagram or to tweet, but to have a conversation, a meaningful conversation, that's really, really important to us. So we've turned this into where we're communicating with our parents quite a bit more, our guardians, whatever the case might be. We're writing letters to people that have influenced our lives. And it may sound corny, but those are some of the things we've started to do differently from when I first started. And but socializing is being able to communicate, having real conversations, having dialogue with your coaches and with your professors and with your strength coaches and with your nutritionist and everything we have now at Rutgers. I mean, there's a lot of different moving parts. So open dialogue with those people is really, really important. And of course, athletically, that goes without saying. And I don't just mean the wrestling part. There's so much more that goes into being a high-level wrestler. And we talked about this even when I was at Jackson. Your hygiene, your sleep habits, when to rest, when to shut it down a little bit, when to pick it up, and understanding your body. And that's dialogue with your staff, that's dialogue with your coaches. But all that stuff became critical. We had this thing in our room, and I don't know if your brother Greg remembers it, but don't be a 3 o'clocker, right? Everybody in the country works hard at 3 o'clock. Everybody. And I say this wherever I go. I even had the same talk with my son's football team the other day. Everybody works really, really hard at 3 o'clock. What separates you? What makes you different? What are you doing at 6 a.m.? What are you doing at 9 p.m.? What do your extra runs look like? What do your lifts look like? How is your nutrition? How is your hygiene? Your sleep pattern? All that stuff matters. And until we started doing that, we didn't turn the corner, and it was really, really important. I think that's the biggest reason why we were so successful at Jackson, because we were doing those things, and it's a lot easier to, I don't want to say manipulate, that's not the right word, but it's a lot easier to talk to a high school kid, because a high school coach is probably, other than their parents, the most influential person in their lives. So they'll listen to anything you say. So we started incorporating this stuff at Jackson, and our guys bought in. It was never hard, even to get our football players to wrestle in the off season. That never mattered. They bought into what we were saying, and it was our system. And I think that's why we were ahead of the game so much when we were at Jackson. But that's kind of how it started. That's kind of where we're at now. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can get into here. We talk a lot about leaders and leadership. So for me, I never had a captain, and this is my philosophy. This isn't necessarily right. I just never really had a captain. Billy Ashnault was probably the closest thing, with Vinny Delafoe to having captains. And for me, I just didn't want to put that extra, push on these guys. They had so much more from an academic standpoint, a social standpoint to worry about. But even when I was at Jackson, I just never had captains. And I was going to do it. I think I want to say 2015. I was ready to name captains, and we had some really, really good guys, guys that would go on to be All-Americans. And not only was I going to have captains, but I was going to be really, really thorough about it. I brought in Kevin Malice, professional football player, was a captain at Rutgers, 2006, 7, 8, 9 years, somewhere in there. Dad's a state trooper. So I did this extensive where these are the three guys I want. I want you to go eat lunch with them. I want you to eat dinner with them. I want you to spend a day with them and go from there and see what they're all about. See if they really want this responsibility, if they could take on this responsibility. And he came back to me and said, you know what, coach? These three guys you're looking at are absolutely ready. So within a span of probably a month, one guy went away because it was off season. One guy went to another college, visited his friend, got in trouble, got jammed up. Nothing crazy, just got jammed up a little bit. The other guy tried to beat the hydration scale, right? Tried to put his thumb on the wall to beat the hydration. Nicest kid in the world. Tried to cheat the hydration. He can't be a captain. And then the other guy, he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, where I said, if I'm not naming these two, I'm not naming this guy. So I decided no captains, but your leaders are your leaders. We know who our leaders are. We depend on our leaders. They're a voice in our room. You know, we have guys right now in our program that are absolute leaders. If they want to talk and communicate about something, it's an open door. It's an open door with all of our guys. But for our leaders to come in and talk to us about it and say, Coach, we're a little run down. Coach, we need more. We got to do more. It's not enough. It's too light. Coach, we need this type of – there'll always be those guys. There's a lot of rah-rah guys, and there's a lot of people that just go to work, right, that just go to work. Like, it's really easy to sit back and watch Anthony Ashnault train, right? You're inspired by it. That's the way you want to train. Nick Soriano won't say a word. He comes in, puts his head down, beats everybody up, leaves. That's it. Now, he's the last one to leave, but he leaves. Doesn't say a word. Maybe he's not going to be the guy to say, hey, they pick your head up. Don't. That's just not – he's locked in on what he needs to do. And listen, to be great, you need to be that way. So in some ways. So that's where Nick is. So your leaders are different, but there are leaders. And there's people who speak for your team, right? Nick Ravina was a guy that comes to mind who always was the guy that would speak for our team. And it was we all knew that. When they wanted something from me, Nick Ravina would come to me. So you have your leaders. Again, that's just my philosophy. When we got really, really good at Jackson, this is going back, obviously, when I was at the high school level, our guys who were the leaders started taking over and started coming in at 6 a.m. with the team. I maybe would do the first one. All right, let's start our morning runs. And then I would be there once. And from then on, they would go 2 or 3 times a week, 6 a.m., either lifts or runs. When you start getting that in your program and you start getting guys to take that initiative and take it on, you become really, really good at that level. And you're just outworking everybody. And that's kind of what we did at that level. And that starts to happen even at Rutgers now. You know, we're fortunate enough to have guys that want to be in there all the time and train all the time and are a really, really good example. Now, that being said, there's got to be a lot of dialogue with these guys because it can't be too much. You know, it can't be too much. We're fortunate at this level we can run a program. And I knew this back at Jackson because believe it or not, when I thought Scotty Winston was overtraining, I would call Donnie Pritzloff because he was recruiting the most. And the biggest thing was rest. And as a coach, especially at the high school level, you're thinking, go, 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 more. Let's throw things down their throat. And you can't do that. And when Scotty wrestled his best is when he was rested. And that's turned into what we do now in college. And I know Greg Zanetti wasn't fortunate enough to be able to do this, but I think when he left, we started incorporating Wednesdays are off. So we go Monday lift, wrestle, Tuesday wrestle, Wednesday totally off. We could have Iowa Friday night. We're off on a Wednesday, you know. So that's kind of the way we go about it, especially first semester. Second semester changes a little bit, but we're fortunate enough we're able to do that, and we stick to that plan. We have a plan every single day, and I'll get into plans here, but every single day we have a plan, and it's there's a lot of preparation that goes into the plan, and everybody's involved in your plan, including your staff. Everybody has a role, whether they're a guy who keeps clock. You know, I had a guy that coached me 11 years at Jackson. He kept the clock for 11 years, and he loved wrestling. Never wrestled a day in his life. Loved it. Couldn't do matchups for me, but he kept the clock every day. So those type of guys have a role in it. But Thursday we'd wrestle and lift. Friday we'd wrestle and do a morning stadium. And then Saturdays would be wherever the staff felt we needed. But that's all planned out. Now, will we stray a little bit from it? Sure. I mean, we got to be flexible. You always got to be flexible based on where you think your program's at. the time of the year you're at, and things like that. You look at all that stuff. But for the most part, we stick to a plan and we prepare, and the whole staff's involved in it, all the way from obviously from our head assistant, Donnie Pritzloff, all the way down to our director of ops and our strength coach, Joe Pollard and Mike DeMarco, are all involved in our plan. Our custodians are involved in the plan. Cafeteria workers were involved in the plan. We wrestled out of a cafeteria when we were at Jackson. Best thing ever happened. We rolled the mats out every day. We rolled them up every day. We didn't have a fancy wrestling room, and that built a lot of character, working out in a cafeteria. So the cafeteria ladies were really, really important. The custodians were really, really important. It was no secret. We practiced every Christmas when I was at Jackson, every Thanksgiving Day when I was at Jackson. You throw $100 to the janitor, boom, they let you right in. So those are relationships you develop, and those are super, super important. And I think the theme there is everybody is important in your program. It can't just be about the 30 wrestlers and the 5 coaches. There's a lot more that goes into running a successful program, and I kind of learned that early on. I don't know if there are questions. I'm just going to keep going. If there are questions, if you guys just want to shoot them up here or just jump in, please do that, because I don't know where I'm at time-wise. I think I'm good, but I could kind of go on and on here, Gene. So let me know where you think I'm at.
I got one for you, Coach. First of all, my brother Greg said, he always said, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late.
Yep.
That was a big point. Wanted to throw that in there. Also, Neil Wortnick asks, does Wednesday rest mean AM workouts off or both AM and PM off?
That's great. Your Wednesday may be a lot different than my Wednesday. So I'll use Anthony because we all know Anthony just won a national title, but his Wednesday was, when he first started, it would be double sessions. So he was overdoing it. He wanted a technique session with Pollard, baby, and he would want like a 45-minute hard go with Pritzloff. And then as he got older, and he did get older and went through all those injuries, and he ended up winning as a 6-year guy, he would pretty much take Wednesdays off. Nick Suriano will not touch a wrestling mat on a Wednesday. So everybody's different. Again, yours may be different than mine. It's just you don't have to be there. In Rutgers' case, we now practice at 11 o'clock. You don't have to be there at 11 o'clock. Do what you got to do. You want to come in for an extra run. You want to come in and watch film. You want to get an extra lift, or you could do nothing. Some guys schedule a lot of classes on Wednesdays. Some guys schedule nothing on Wednesdays. So they figure that out as we go. And that's all part of the recruiting process. So that's a really, really good question. But if you can get, and I know it's a hard thing to do, especially at the high school level, to give a day off. Best thing that's ever happened to our program. I got to give credit to Frank Molinaro. Obviously, he takes that from the Penn State program. He brought that to us, and that's been a huge thing for us. So those are some of the things we're doing now. Recruiting-wise, what do we sell? How do we attract people? Obviously, we're trying to sell a winning culture. I've said this over and over. I think your philosophy stays the same. Mine has changed a lot, right? I've gotten a lot better, I think, over the years based on some of my shortfalls as a coach. But your culture is always going to change. Your team dynamic is always going to change. When you lose Ashnault, you lose your leader, right? Because he was so successful. We didn't have him last year. And we wrestled 6 freshmen. We didn't have Suriano. We lost Gravina. We lost Johnny Van Brill. So our dynamic changes. But your philosophy pretty much stays the same. You look for new leaders. Your core values, your morals stay the same. But really the dynamic of your room changes. Your personalities change, and we do a lot of that. We do a lot of team meetings. We have a team psych we work with, and there's a lot that goes into that. But from a recruiting standpoint, there's no doubt your culture is important. And like I said, I've changed a lot. Character now means so much more to me than multiple state titles. It doesn't matter. And the stories are well documented. I could sit here and tell you a million stories that I would go into a recruit's home and sit down for dinner, and just by the way he talked to his parents, I'd pick up my cell phone, I'd fake a call. I got a call. Listen, I got an emergency. I have to go. Now, I don't feel good about lying, right? But the truth is, I'm not going to sit here. If you're going to treat your parents that way, you're probably going to treat me that way somewhere down the line in our staff and your teammates. So we'll just turn the page on that recruits. And we've jumped off a bunch of high-end recruits we felt we probably could have gotten based on the way they interact with their family. So that's really, really important. I've walked in the rooms, how you live your life. This is kind of weird, but one of my big strategies and something I do, and at this point now, especially the Jersey guys know if I'm coming to your home, there's a good chance I'm going to ask to see how you live, and there's times saying, listen, I want to see your room, how you living. And that's kind of weird for some people. And I've walked into some pigsties. I've walked into some things on the walls where I'm like, well, if he's doing this in high school, maybe he's probably going to do it in college. And then I've walked into some great places where you end up having a relationship. The coolest thing is seeing all the brackets on the walls from when they were little and all these guys that were in the same weight. But there's a lot that goes into it. So I could tell a really, really quick story. We had a kid committed to us, and I'll make it brief. He committed to us. He trained with us all summer. He went to Fargo, and back then you were in pool play in Fargo. He lost a match in Fargo. Then he teched the next guy. So based on the triangle, he had the most points. Well, when he lost, he was so down on himself, and he put so much pressure because of the recruiting process. He commits to us on the floor at Fargo. So we trained him all summer. We thought he may commit to us. He did because he lost. He wanted to get it all out of the way. Couldn't handle the pressure. Now, next thing you know, he texts the next guy. He's in the finals, goes on to the finals. Tech falls in the finals, wins junior nationals. Tom Brands opens up his book, says, this guy won juniors. I'm calling this guy. Now he's back on the board. We have to recruit him. We go do a home visit, great dinner, good meal, solid. I go up to, I hit him with the old, let's take a look at the room. I hit him with it. I walk in his room, Iowa wrestling all over his room. His whole life was to wrestle for Iowa. Sure enough, he ends up going to Iowa, and it worked out because we got astronaut. We never lost to that guy again, but he was a good one. I was upset we lost him, but that's a pretty cool recruiting story that I think about all the time. So treating your parents right, what separates you, and understand that every kid's different. Every kid's different. How you train them is different. There's been times I've walked in, and Greg, if you're listening, you probably remember the story. I went in there with the whole Vince Lombardi speech. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. If you're not with us, if you don't want to put your life on the line for us, then you need to leave. Next day, one of the best kids I've ever coached, the greatest kid, who had an unbelievable freshman year. His name's Mike Wagner from South Plainfield. He decided, you know what? I'm not 100% into this, coach. I don't want to do this. I can't give you everything. And I was like, Mike, I really wasn't talking to you. I was talking to the guys that don't put the time in. I'm not. So this kid, anyway, he wanted to be Marine, and he won 16 matches as a true freshman at 197. No question he was going to be an All-American, I thought. And he was like a 3.8 student and gave up his time at Rutgers and went on to he's a Marine, and he's out of the Marine Corps now, obviously. He's doing some great things out in California. But I was still trying to get him because your clock kind of freezes as a Marine. I was still trying to get him late. So that's a pretty cool story, too. So you got to make sure you know who you're talking to when you have those team meetings. And it's great to send a message, but just make sure you know what you're doing when you go in there, because that's a mistake I made. And if I knew he was teetering, maybe I wouldn't have had that speech, or maybe I wouldn't have done that message and sent that message that day with Mike Wagner. Development plan. How do we develop our guys? It's important, man. It's one-on-one. Again, every kid is different. There's a lot of one-on-one dialogue that goes into it. And we were doing this even when I was at Jackson. Maybe it was sitting a kid out of practice and just spending time with them after practice and doing one-on-ones and having them come in later or having them come in early. But certainly we do that at the college level. There's a lot of dialogue, and I think that has to last the whole career. And if it doesn't, you're missing something there from a relationship standpoint. So understand that dialogue with a guy is really, really important. There's no secret. The best guys in our program, for as long as I can remember, spend the most time with us up in our office. They don't just walk in the locker room, practice, and walk out. The best guys spend the most time in our coach's office, game planning, talking film, talking strategies, philosophy, all that good stuff. So there's an incredible relationship there, and that one-on-one dialogue is important. Goal setting strategy. When do I do it, and why do I do it? And this may be different. I don't really ask a kid their goals. For me, it's I'll wait till after first semester, because if you get a kid, and I've had this done to me even this year, what do you want to do? What's your goal? What do you want to get out of this? I want to be a 4-time national champ. Do you really want to be a 4-time national champ? You haven't stepped foot on campus yet. You don't know what it's like to navigate the academic waters, the social waters, the workload that goes into it, the nutrition. There's so much more that goes into it than just wrestling. Do you really know what it takes to be a 4-time national champ? So I got tired of hearing I'm going to win a national title. So we started making our every guy's got to have goals, right? We talk about it. And what is your plan for the week? What does your week look like? What do your 2 weeks look like? But I don't start asking them their goals until really around Midlands time, around Christmas time. Now you've had a semester to see where you're at and kind of know what college wrestling is all about and know how hard it really is and what goes into it and living a championship lifestyle. Now, what are your goals? Because your goals got to match your lifestyle. There's no day. I mean, you can't tell me you want to win a 4-time national champ, but you're a national champ on a Friday night. You just can't do it. So you got to be really, and these talks have to be solid. You got to be really, really solid with these talks, and they got to be honest. And there's times I've told kids, listen, you could have that goal, but the way you live your life, your lifestyle doesn't match that. So it sounds great. It's a lot of lip service, but until you change some of your habits, it's going to be hard. Those are tough conversations. But if you want to get a kid to another level, you got to have those conversations. So those are some of the things as far as developing a plan. Team aspect, it's an individual sport, but it's very much a team sport. And that's something that goes on, and I'm getting kind of a weird light here. I'm going to just change this angle. Probably see me better right now. Good. So anyway, it's an individual sport. There's no question about it. And when it's time to be an individual and lock in on an individual, obviously we get around the Big Ten championships and the national tournament. It's about that individual, making sure they're getting their reps, they're getting their rest, they're getting their sleep, they're getting their practices in. But during the season, we're very much a team, and to be ultra successful, it's got to be about the team. And that's just been my philosophy. I'm not saying, I know a lot of college coaches that have had incredible careers that are worried about one thing, the national tournament, and having All-Americans and champs. And they do. They don't do much as a team, but they'll always have a couple All-Americans here or there, a national champ here or there, and they're good with that. So for me, it's always about the team. I just think you get so much more when there's an emphasis on that team. And we let our guys know, your time's going to come where it's going to be just about you. It's going to be just about you. Now, some of these guys get a little bit older, and they're going to get their opportunity. It is going to be about them, and their training is going to be, we'll do some things even differently this year because of the unique characteristics some of our guys have, and the guys coming back. And we'll do some things different where there's more one-on-one workouts, there are more group workouts than team workouts. So that we'll always have that approach. We'll always be able to adapt. You have to be able to adapt to the times, but adapt to your culture and the guys on your team. So we look at all that. And again, that's a lot of dialogue with the coaches, and those are good talks. So again, we talked about leaders at the bottom. At the end of the day, the bottom line is you're the leader, the coach. You're the leader. You're the guy that sets the tone. And here's the reality. I can never have a bad day. I can't have a bad day. Nobody cares what's going on with my family. Nobody cares what's going on with my 2 teenagers. Nobody cares what's going on with our academic advisor, with our athletic director. I can't come in there moping, right? They have to have my absolute best for an hour and a half, and I can get into that. I don't believe in more than a 2-hour practice. But for however long we're in that practice room, it's got to be my best, and I can never have a bad day. And there were days where it was terrible dealing with academics, dealing with issues with guys on the team, dealing with failed drug tests, and dealing with a whole bunch of crazy stuff. But I can't have a bad day when I go through those doors in practice. There's got to be energy and enthusiasm, 2 things you can always control. Always control your energy, always control your enthusiasm, and you got to bring them every single day. Take the time to know everybody, right? And I said this a little bit before, and that's probably my hardest job. It's been my hardest job, is taking the time to know every kid on your team, know the siblings, know their grandparents, know what they do, know what they're, obviously their parents, where do they work, their guardians, what they're doing. Take the time to know them and know the family dynamic. And that's probably, everybody's complained a little bit about, and listen, I'm one of them too. I complain. This whole coronavirus has been really, really hard. Our staff has spent so much time on these Zoom calls with parents, with families, and getting to know these people, especially these incoming guys. It's the most time we've spent. We have 11 freshmen coming in. Absolutely the most time we've ever spent with an incoming class. So I need to do more of that. I need to do it during the season. There needs to be relationships with not just our starting 149-pounder, but his brother and his sister. I need to know what they're doing. So I just think that's super important. And again, we talked about our custodians, our cafeteria workers. They're a huge part of really what we're doing. You never know what somebody's going through, right? You never know what a kid's going through. You never know what goes on in their home life unless you ask. right? Unless you have those tough conversations. So to me, that's always been part of coaching. That's coaching, that's education, that's teaching. And I always believe we did a little bit more than everybody at Jackson just because we had guys that would run through walls for us, guys that would do anything. Listen, our guys, they would stay home sick. They would miss school for whatever reason. They wouldn't miss practice. They would never miss practice. They loved being a part of that program. And that's, from a wrestling standpoint, that's from a football standpoint, dabbled a little bit in golf, all that stuff. So that's just kind of how we go about running our program. That's kind of the dialogue we have with our guys. I do have a little bit more. Most important thing you can do, get everybody to believe in the mission, what you're trying to achieve. They need to know what you're trying to achieve. That's super important. You can't say, we're gonna go try to win the Brockport tournament this weekend. That's our goal. We want to win the Brockport tournament. No, we're on a mission to do something that's never been done here before. And when you come here, and this is part of the recruiting process again, there's expectations on this program now because of guys like Greg Zanetti and Dan Rinaldi and Scott Winston, Vinny Delafave, and everything that's been built. There's expectations now, whether you like it or not. And we lose a lot of guys because they struggle to live up to those expectations, and they struggle to live up to the fan base that's been created, not by me. It's been created by the guys that have wrestled for the last 12 years there. So they need to understand the mission and what we're trying to accomplish. They need to know and they have to be realistic. Our goals need to be realistic. Like, it would be dumb for me to come in there and say, last year, we want to win a national title. We didn't have the team to win a national title. We want to have national champs and All-Americans, and we want to find ourselves in the top 10. Now, with everybody we got coming in, a couple of transfers we got coming in, we turn our attention to winning a trophy. Are we ready to beat Penn State right now? No. There's a bunch of missing pieces. Are we ready to beat Iowa right now? No. Could we win a trophy at the national tournament if we wrestle well? Yeah. So that's our mission. That's our focus. And that's kind of what we will gear towards. Pool meets will be incredibly important. It's how we built this fan base. People love coming to the rack. That in itself is something that goes on every single day with our staff. Our staff has a job every week, is to call 4 to 5 high school coaches, rec coaches, and junior high coaches. That's their job. Communicate with them. Let them know what we're doing. Get them on season tickets. Get fans on season tickets. That goes on all summer long. So that never ends. That's part of building a fan base, building a brand. That's super. I know Coach Bono was on here and probably did an incredible job talking about how to build a brand. That guy's built that Wisconsin brand in 2 years already. So he's incredible at what he does. And I do spend a lot of time talking to those guys, and don't be afraid to learn. Pick his brain, pick all these coaches' brain. I'm not afraid to call the best coaches in the country. What are you doing? How are you running your RTC? What are you doing weight cutting wise? How are these guys making weight? Where are you at? So don't be afraid to do that. But yeah, most importantly is have a mission and make sure everybody's on the bus and they're driving in the right direction. And if they're not, you probably gotta ask them to get off the bus. And that's a hard thing to do. I'm probably known for giving the most chances or taking the most chances on guys, giving them a second chance or maybe a third chance. But again, for me, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, for me, that's my philosophy. I'm a lot more than a wrestling coach. I'm a teacher. It's easy to kick a kid off the team. That's easy to do. Very easy to do. You're gone. And then maybe there's sometimes, and probably it's been maybe our biggest gripe with our staff. We don't agree on everything. At the end of the day, and they know the one thing Goodale likes to do is have a long rope. Because again, you don't know what they're going back to at home. You don't know what they're going to be like without wrestling. This is the one outlet where maybe they're safe here, whatever the case might be. And again, that's a lot of dialogue. Now, after 2 or 3 times and it goes bad, I got to do a better job of releasing, but I don't ever like to do that. And then here's the last thing I'll leave you with, and I'll open up. Again, I know I'm a bit long-winded here, and I apologize for that. Last thing I have, and I say this everywhere I go, I'm not a big into dreaming. And I know that probably sounds crazy, especially being on, wrestling mindset and winning mindset, but I don't believe in dreaming. Dreaming is you go to bed, you have this crazy dream, and I want to be a millionaire. I'm driving a boat. Well, I'm a wrestling coach. I'm never going to be a millionaire. And I'm really okay with that. I believe in having a vision and attacking the vision every single day. And I got off my path for a long time at the beginning there, first couple of years, 3 or 4 years. It was just a selfish person just trying to win because it made me look good. But the vision was always there that we were going to build this program We're going to put fans in the seats. We're going to be the hottest commodity in New Jersey. It's going to be everywhere you go in this state. And that was our vision. And again, this is not about Scott Goodale. There's so many people that are involved in this, from our coaching staff. I've been through 4 athletic directors. I've been through 5 football coaches, and I have a relationship with all of them because they're part of the vision. And that's kind of just the way I believe. Attack it every day. You know, if it was a normal work week, we'd be up there at 9 o'clock talking academics. We'd be in there at 10 o'clock talking recruiting. By 11:30, we're planning for a practice. By 3 o'clock, we're getting ready to go in the room with our guys. In between, there's calls to administrators, donors, respective high school coaches. That's the way we go about our business. Every single day, we attack that vision because, like I said, we're on a mission. There's a goal out there for us, what we want to do. I got a staff where I'm super, super fortunate. And again, that goes without saying. Surround yourself with great people. Don't surround yourself with big names. Surround yourself with great people that are willing to work their tails off for you. And I've been able to do that. I've been with a bunch of really, really good coaches I've coached with. And I love where we're at now. We're fortunate. You know, I think Donnie Pritzloff's the best coach in the world. I truly believe that. That's me. Obviously, I'm biased. John Leonardis is not only a great friend, the guy holds me accountable for every single thing I do. And he's probably the hard ass of the group, but he holds you accountable. He's a great person. Joe Pollard's a salt of the earth. Kyle Kiss is great at what he does. Mike DeMarco wrestled for me. He's now our strength and conditioning coach. I wake up every day fired up to get to the office. Every single day. Not everybody could say that. And I didn't always say that. I woke up, when I first started, I was like, what the heck did I get myself into? I thought it was just about wrestling. There was so much more that went into it. But I wake up every single day, man, and I can't wait to get into the office and talk wrestling and talk film and talk about donors and talk about recruits and how are we going to get better and how are we going to catch these teams. So when you stop having that desire, it's probably time to let somebody else take over. And right now, I just feel like this is the all-time highest I've ever been. And I went through a lot. It wasn't easy. Like everybody thought, well, you had these 2 national championships right at the No, that got really, really hard. For the last 2 years, I got away from my faith, and I don't want to get real personal on this call because I want to open it up, but I started to get away from the things that kind of made me who I was, and I had to get back to that. You know, there were those tough, even though we won national titles, we didn't enjoy it because we thought now we could get every recruit. We worked harder. We never sat back and enjoyed it with our families, our staff. You got to enjoy what you're doing. You got to enjoy, obviously, you got to enjoy the upswings, the high times, but you got to also enjoy the adversity and the tough times because that's what it's all about. That's wrestling. So we weren't enjoying it at all. We were just working, thinking, we got these 2 champs now, let's go get more. And we never really sat back and enjoyed it. Again, that's on me. You know, that's my fault. And we're back to where we need to be. We're excited. We're excited for the guys we have coming in, and we're just going to keep getting better. And hopefully we can attain this goal that we set out to do 13 years ago.
We're real excited to have been part of the Rutgers wrestling family for a very long time. I've been to many schools, told everyone Rutgers is my favorite out of all the different places I went to, different master's degrees, everything. And I love Rutgers. I look at it as at home. And everything you do, everything you've done for Greg, really appreciate it. So we've got a couple questions here. They're asking about recruiting. Do you recruit around the country? Of course, but they're saying about southern states. And what about a Cali kid like Aguilar, how does he fit in with the New Jersey expectations?
He's a Jersey guy. You know, this quarantine sent him back to California. The kid's miserable. Feels like he needs to be back in Jersey. So our guys, I feel, do a really, really good job of adopting the out-of-state kids. Or adopted them, and we haven't had a ton of success. Aguilar has been really, really good, and we've had some guys come through the program that have stuck with it and been really, really good. But we need, for us to take that next step, we need the best guys in the country. I don't care if they're coming from the South, the Midwest, out West, wherever they're coming from, and that's where our recruiting's changed. And, you know, the New Jersey people kind of get mad at me when I say this, is you can't just do it with Jersey guys. Not every kid could just stay home. You only get 9.9 scholarships. You only get 9.9. So every little Johnny thinks they should be on a full ride, or at least the parents do. So that's a hard thing to do. So there's kids that want to go away. You know, they want to get away. They want to get away from New Jersey wrestling scene. And so for us to really take the next step, I think we got to be nationwide. We got to get the best kids. We got to get the best. Listen, the Big Ten is super, super hard. It's difficult, man. It's night in and night out. We got to find the guys that fit your program. So that's probably been the hardest part is in joining the Big Ten. They said, does that help your recruiting? Yeah. It puts us on a list of all the best guys they want to wrestle in this conference. But it's been hard to keep the best kids from Jersey home. Not everybody wants to stay home, and they have to fit your program. And again, like I said earlier, that's changed. If I was early on, I would take them all. But a lot of it is our culture and our dynamic and what we're looking for in a kid.
Absolutely. And now another question, Frank Barbie, bringing up about Rivera coming over, transferring over. Everyone would love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Sebastian, Sebastian grew up in Jackson, in my town. He grew up in our wrestling room. He's a little kid. We would, on snow days, we didn't need the gym at some points. We didn't need to get into the high school. We'd go to his dad's wrestling facility at the Elite Club, which was right near the high school. We trained there. And so Sebastian grew up in Jackson wrestling. And he's just a great kid. And, and this is where recruiting comes in. This is where you got to really do your due diligence. You really got to do your homework. What we heard about Sebastian was, maybe he wasn't really into it. Maybe he really didn't want to wrestle in college. Maybe he just wanted to get away. So we got a kid through our club, Brandon Patesel, who has ended up doing a heck of a job at Lehigh. He's having a great career. We ended up getting him early, so we never really recruited Sebastian. Now, I had a bunch of elite kids. Winston was an elite kid. Delafava was an elite kid. Seidenberg's were an elite kid. And maybe it wasn't the best, Greg can tell you, it wasn't the best times from an All-American standpoint at that time. So maybe he thought, I'm going to send my kid away. And he did that. We didn't really recruit him until it was too late. But there's always been a relationship with Steve and Sebastian and Melissa's mom. So, when it was time, I had heard he wanted to graduate and come back home. He's going to probably take over the school of wrestling. He's big into MMA. We've been training with him the last 2 weeks. He'll go whenever you want to go. He's everything as advertised. He's an incredible athlete. He's big, but man, he brings so much fire to a room, and he's just a stingy kid. And he wants the best guy. Obviously, he's trained with Anthony a whole heck of a lot. He looks forward to being with Nick, which some people get intimidated by. He looks forward to it because they're going to make each other better. But this kid can win a national title. What are the expectations for him? That's the expectation. So we need to do everything in our power from a resource standpoint to make sure he's in the spot to win a national title. And that's all we can do. And like I said, every kid's different, and he'll probably be, because he's a fifth-year guy, maybe he's treated a little bit, right? Maybe he's not in on every team workout. Maybe it's more one-on-ones. Maybe it's more groups. Maybe it's just him or Nick in some areas of the season, and maybe he doesn't need as much because he's had a couple injuries. So we're excited to have Sebastian, man. He's the Seabass. Jersey loves him. The fans you saw, I swear to God, the Big Ten fan base jumped on board his wagon at the Big Tens, and he talks about it, man. He just rolled with it, and he just felt energized by it. And his speech at the Big Tens was pretty epic. It had nothing to do with coming to Rutgers. It was just him being a showman, and probably gets that a little bit from Frankie Edgar. But he's like Frankie Edgar's little son, or little brother. So it's no secret he was coming back because he wants to fight. So that's probably the biggest reasons.
Yeah, that was awesome. We're real excited to have him back home. Great stuff, Coach. Really appreciate it. I guess time for one more question. What's your biggest challenge? What was your biggest challenge coming in at the collegiate level?
That was probably the biggest challenge, man. I never even thought about the distractions at Rutgers. For me, it was wrestle. And why aren't you doing everything to be here, to train hard? If I had a million Greg Zanettis, we would have been all right. I just didn't have that. We didn't have that. So that was the hardest challenge, was to get everybody to really, really buy in that we could do something special here. And that was hard. I didn't think, you guys post that tweet a lot. What's cool? Going out at night partying isn't cool. Getting your hand raised is cool. I always said that. I thought that's the coolest thing. Like, there should be nothing more important than getting your hand raised, right? And at the time, guys like other things. So I just didn't understand why. Because when I was at Jackson, it was a town. All they wanted to do was wrestle and win a state championship. That's all they wanted to do. And, I didn't understand at the time, these are 19, 20, 21-year-olds that, hey, they might have a life outside of wrestling. They might like the nightlife. Maybe they're having a girlfriend for the first time. Who knows? And, maybe they like going to parties, and I just didn't get it. That was probably the biggest challenge. And then, navigating the waters, understanding this wasn't about me. This was about putting together an incredible product on a mat that can win at a high level and that can draw people to it. And that was probably the hardest thing, especially early on.
See what you've done with the program and everything you've done with the athletes, not just on the wrestling mat, but also in the classrooms and in their life. So we're really happy to have you over there at Rutgers. We love being part of the Rutgers wrestling family, and we're going to be out. God willing, we'll be over there supporting the team again this year. So
we'll be back. We'll be back. It might be a little bit shorter version, but I'm very, very confident after talking with the Big Ten coaches that we'll be back wrestling pretty quickly. Absolutely. I shouldn't say quickly, but you know what I mean. We'll have a season. But thank you, man.
Way? Social media pages, website. I guess they just Google Rutgers Wrestling.
Rutgers at Coach Goodale. Yeah, at Coach Goodale is the best way to do it. That's probably the best way to do it. We have a podcast now. I'm sure you guys have seen with Anthony and I get on every Friday and just shoot it a little bit and talk about anything from everything and bring on some really, really cool guests. So every Friday morning, we're going to take the week off. We've gone 13 weeks straight. He's been traveling a little bit, trying to get healthy. So we're going to take tomorrow off. But yeah, at Coach Goodale is a way to find me. And I appreciate all you guys do, man. You've always given me a platform. You've always been good to our teams. You've been in our room and at our camp. So I love what you guys do. I'm honored that you have me as part of this unbelievable program. I tuned in a couple times today just because I'm so into this stuff. But I appreciate everything you guys do. And I miss your brother, man. I miss your brother. I want him back. I want one more year with him.
Thanks again. And like I said, we do it again. You were one of the first people we thought to ask about this. We do this again, we'll let you know. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you guys. See ya.
All right. Take care. The great coach, Scott Goodale. Excellent stuff that we've been going through this whole time.